in bush. I've got him at gunpoint.
Okay, gunpoint 132 in bush. Covers code 3.
Welcome to Roll Call with the Richmond Police Department. I'll be your host today. I'm Detective Pat Tudor. Today's episode, we're going to be looking at our patrol division. I've got some guests on set with me today. Today's episode is going to be called The Front Line of Service. Appreciate you being with us today. I'm going to start to my left and let our guests introduce themselves.
I'm Renee Ware, I'm third shift patrol sergeant. I've been on approximately 19 years.
Austin Lips, I'm a lieutenant, I'm the patrol commander, and I've been on for 19 years.
John Knock, I work in the patrol division. I've been with RPD for 3 years.
Well, appreciate you guys being here today. I know, like the first episode, our guest, including myself, had a little bit of nerves, so we're not used to always being on camera. But I'll just kind of have an icebreaker question. We'll start with you, John. Give me a hobby of yours.
When it's warm, I enjoy golfing.
I love books.
Books?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Working out.
Working out. I'd say mine is I like riding ATV side-by-sides. That's something that my family do at least, 4 or 5 times a year. We take trips down to West Virginia. So a little bit about us. So again, I guess we'll probably just start off today with you, Lieutenant Lips, and just kind of talk a little bit about our division, how many officers we have in the division, what the shifts look like, what the work schedule looks like.
Well, we have 48 officers in the patrol division, and they're broken down into 3 shifts. They're 10-hour shifts each with a 4-day on, 4-day off schedule. And those shifts are broken down into 2 squads. Of those 48 officers, we have 7 supervisors, 4 are K-9, 4 are school resource officers, and then we have 4 more at the academy that will be graduating, I think, at the end of April. And after their field training program that will end in about July, they'll come to patrol as well. See, Richmond's got about 35,000 people in it, but I would say probably 40,000 people a day if you include all the people working, going to school, that sort of stuff. So out of those 40,000 people, we probably deal with 1,000 individuals a year. And then you can break that down further into we probably have maybe 50 to 100 regulars, as we like to call them, that we will deal with almost constantly throughout the year. And that's 48 officers will cover 24 square miles of Richmond.
So of the 3 shifts that we have, are there certain shifts that are typically a little bit busier than the other shifts?
Yeah, second shift, 2 p.m. to midnight, that is always the busy shift. You will run from call to call to call. I spent, I think, 12 or 13 years on second shift, both as a patrolman and a supervisor, and I can't remember a day where we didn't run wall to wall with calls, and you didn't know the day was over until you went home.
Yeah, and I think that it's probably a little bit due to, the time of year. Obviously, wintertime, people aren't out as much, and that will affect call volume. But, I mean, and, John, you could probably talk a little bit about, what a busy summer night when it's warm out and, kids are out of school. And, I mean, I don't think it's uncommon to say you guys maybe take 120, 130 calls in a night, you think?
Yeah, it's somewhere up there. And then the slow days are 60, 50, maybe down into the 40s in the winter, but a slow day is, the days still go by quick.
Yeah.
And that's about 6 officers per shift. So, I mean, there's really no rest on second shift.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can reflect back to, and I think I did roughly 12 years on second shift. And I enjoyed second shift because I like that pace, that tempo, staying busy. The years I did on third, it was a little bit more trying to be proactive because the call volume maybe wasn't as high. So you're out doing a little bit more self-initiated stuff. So I'm sure when you guys are running those 40 or 50 calls, it does provide more opportunity to kind of go out and do a little bit more proactive type police work. Maybe talk a little bit, Austin, about within our 3 shifts, do we have any other like specialized officers on those shifts that have any other additional responsibilities?
Yes, so like Sergeant Ware is on the SWAT team. Our field training officers, our patrol officers, we have drone operators, crisis negotiators, there's honor guard. I can't think of any other. I know we have other specialized divisions, but I think almost every patrolman has a specialized ability within the patrol division.
Yeah, so our officers are wearing, and we talked a little bit about this in the first episode, you're wearing different hats, right?
Yes.
You might be a patrol officer, but you also might be an FTO, which is a field training officer. Talk maybe just a little bit about really anybody, Renee, you could all talk about it as well, but because I know you were an FTO for many years. But, what are kind of the roles and responsibilities of our FTOs?
It's training the new officers that just came back from the academy, teaching them policy, procedures, how to handle calls on shift.
Yeah, and if you go back to all of us, I've got 28 years on now. You're how many?
Almost 19.
Yeah, what about you, Austin?
19.
19.
Just hit 3.
Yeah, so I mean, we've got a pretty good range of, experience, but, I can remember finally getting out of the academy and you're like, yes, I've graduated, I'm ready to go out and work the streets, and you still come back and you've got another, 16 weeks?
12, I think.
Okay, 12
yeah.
weeks. I think it used to be 16.
16.
Yeah. And again, during that 12 weeks is really, I hate to say it, you get your foundation at the academy, but until you kind of come out and you're going through, there's 4 different phases
Yes.
that the officers go through. So, you've got your different phase and there's kind of goals and objectives for each one of those phases. And you have to exceed all the expectations for every one of those phases to make it to the next. But I can remember, getting close to that 16 week and they needed somebody to work the east side of town. And they're like, hey, look, we're going to put you out tonight by yourself. And I remember just that kind of nervousness. You'd always had your field training officer with you. And the first time that you're out on your own, I clearly remember being told like, hey, look, take your calls. Don't stop anything. Don't do anything more than you have to. Just get through the shift this evening. But it is a nice transition when you get to make it out. Finally.
It's kind of scary too.
It
Your
is.
first couple weeks by yourself. Yeah, you don't have that safety net anymore.
Yeah. So maybe talk a little bit about, and a minute ago, Austin, you mentioned the number of officers that we typically have, working a shift. And, how do we kind of come up with those numbers? And is Richmond kind of broken into districts? How do officers get assigned maybe where they're going to patrol that night?
Yeah, so Richmond's broken down into 4 districts, districts 1 through 4. District 1 is everything west of the Whitewater River, so the entire west side of town. District 2 is the south side of town, and that's everything south of Main Street all the way up to South 23rd Street. And then you have the Whitewater River as your western boundary. District 3 is just everything north of Main Street to North 23rd, all the way up to I-70. And then District 4 is everything east of 23rd Street. And then we have the 5th officer who's a floater, and he or she will just, doesn't have an assigned district, can either focus on some type of proactive enforcement, or we might have a certain problem in a certain area, and they just might sit there and handle those problems.
Yeah, we typically call that like a targeted enforcement.
Yes, targeted, directed enforcement. We'll get information that there might be drug dealing just in this area. That officer will sit there and get some stops out of there and some arrests. What was the other question?
Yeah, no. So, going back to the shifts and the numbers and the districts, I mean, we typically, I would say from my experience, we typically dispatch how many officers to a call?
Oh, two.
Yeah.
It's almost always two call.
Yeah.
2 officers to a call.
Unless it's maybe something that's like speak to an officer or something that's a minor investigation or something like that. But, so typically you've got 2 officers that are going to be going to calls. And again, if you look at second shift, John, you could talk about this. It's like, if you've got 6 officers, it realistically could be you've got 2 officers, that are on 3 separate calls, and you get back in your car and you see the call screen and you've got, additional calls pending.
Dispatch is always on the radio asking for people to break away. And Pat, I remember this happened to us a couple of times. On second shift, you're so busy that you will only spend your entire shift with one other officer.
Yes.
Because before you're even clearing the call you're on now, there's 3 or 4 backed up that you have to take.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been several nights in the summer where I haven't seen the entire shift except for one officer.
Yeah, and that was, I think, kind of the one thing that I liked about second, because, typically dinner time might be 6, 7 o'clock, but when you're running busy, you look down and it's 9:30. Like, man, I'm almost 3/4 of the way through the shift. I haven't eaten yet. A lot of guys will just, pack something in a cooler or just hit a drive-through real quick. But, second shift definitely, I think, from an agency standpoint, is where the call volume, typically is
It's
the
a great
heaviest.
learning shift.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. But each, I guess, shift has its own unique things. Even in the summertime when it's nice out and people tend to get out and visit the bars and things that might be open a little bit later, that stuff still dies down. 3, 4 a.m. So again, the type of work that you do really is kind of based on the type of hours and the people that are out. Wintertime on third shift, there'd be nights where, especially if it's January or February and it's cold, you might not see hardly any traffic out whatsoever. So you spend your entire evening checking businesses, looking for tire tracks in the snow or footprints and, trying to, stay active enough that you can catch those people that are maybe breaking into a car out east or something. So what about, since you're on third shift, maybe talk about, Renee, a little bit about what you guys are seeing, either trends or maybe even recent things that we've been dealing with in the city that you think is maybe more isolated to, like, say, third shift. Like, you guys don't get bank alarm calls.
No, we get a lot of drunk drivers, intoxicated people, whether it be through alcohol, drugs, domestics, fights, bar fights. That's usually the trend that we see on third shift.
Yeah, and I know that just even here recently, we've had several vehicles that have been broken
Yes.
to out on the east side of town at some of the hotels, and trying to, again, we go back to that target enforcement. I know that we've pulled resources even outside our patrol division, meaning we've actually had our detectives out, working some of those details to try to, catch the individuals that are responsible for, either stealing the cars, or I know we've had a bunch of cars broken into as well. And sometimes those things come in cycles, when it comes to, say, our vehicle thefts. We all know that there's certain vehicles that get targeted off of some of the lots, just because they're high theft, or, there's, for the ease of stealing them, it makes it pretty easy. Maybe talk a little bit about, if you don't mind, John, you're in your uniform today. I know that we as an agency, I mean, what do you guys think? In the last probably 3 years, we've had a little bit of a transition to what the appearance looks like. And I would think that most, if you look at law enforcement across the country, there's been a little bit of transition in what the uniform looks like. I think there still are some agencies that aren't wearing a external vest carrier like that John's got on today, but maybe talk about that transition, because I know with 28 years on, technology's changed. I was talking to some students earlier this week, college students, about what 28 years ago looked like, and I can remember that being in my patrol car, and I had a notepad, right? We can laugh, but John's laughing. I had a notepad, kind of affixed up toward the windshield, and when dispatch would send you the call, you're pulling over, you're writing down the address, you're trying to remember it, all the information that they're giving, you're writing it down, and then you would proceed to it. Now, it's on a computer in the car, much like what I've got in front of me today, and it gives you all the information. So we'll talk about the what's maybe inside our vehicles, but talk a little bit today, John, just about the uniform that you're wearing.
Yeah, I mean, when I hired on 3 years ago, everybody was wearing the dress uniform. Some had a dress outer carrier, and then not too long after that, outer carriers got approved. It allows you just to move all the stuff up off your hips and stuff, and it helps out a lot. And then body cameras as well. We were equipped with those, I believe, shortly after I finished FTO, and they help out a lot more than you realize. Just being able to go back and review stuff. But no, just in general, we're better equipped now than we've ever been.
Yeah. So, I think probably merits a little discussion. We didn't wear the outer vest carriers, when we hired on. I mean, it wasn't up until maybe 3 years ago. But, I know for me, when I had all my gear around my waist, you feel it on your back, especially, even just setting in the car, getting things out of a line and, trying to stay kind of, adjusted and it making your hips a little off. But, I think there's been some medical research done that's kind of shown that, getting that weight distributed a little bit more onto our upper body and dispersing the weight is putting less strain, on the back. But, some of the things that I think that you've got on your vest is very common, for the community to know that, our officers typically are going to have, their lights, their handcuffs, maybe some additional magazines for their firearm. Obviously, they've got their mic, they've got their body camera, which you don't have yours with you today, but I see you've got your mount.
Yep.
The taser. It's a lot of gear. I mean, wouldn't you guys say probably another 30, 40 pounds?
Yeah.
Yeah, depending on, we've got a couple officers that might have a little bit more, some that have a little bit less, but, I'd say probably 20, 25 pounds on average you're going to, pack around with you every day. And again, I think it does make us a little bit, not only benefit us to keep our body, and without having some of those side effects around the waist, but I think it also allows, officers the opportunity to, carry in a way that it gives them a little bit more mobility. So let's talk a little bit about the implementation of the cameras. I mean, that was a whole big undertaking, I think, as an agency, because, you guys don't have those on until you come into the, your duty day. So just kind of maybe, also, if you want, just walk us through that process, what the officers have to do to get their cameras. How's that work? How does it record all the time?
I think it's a better question for you two to answer.
So, I mean, we have docks in our car that you can charge your body camera in, download the video footage to the computer. But I just opt to keep it in the department, beginning of shift. You have your roll call. You got to go there anyways, pick up your body camera while you're there. Usually by that time it's fully charged, and other than that, you're good to go. It technically records all the time. You don't get any audio until you hit the button, and then it goes back 30 seconds with no audio, and then it's on until battery dies or you deactivate it.
So, when I was in patrol, obviously I didn't wear a body camera. So, especially for you two that are in uniform every day, how difficult has it been? Because, that's a new tool that you're wearing, and I heard you say that it's recording all the time, but it's not going to record audio, but you have to hit that button. So has it become instinctive? Do you ever forget? Let's say that you get dispatched to a person with a gun and it's high stress, you're focused on trying to get there safely. I mean, do you ever forget to reach down and hit that button?
When we first got them, because of course I came on as well, we didn't have body cameras. When we first got them, it was, oh crap, I forgot to push the button to record. But then as time went on, it was easier to okay, we got a call, hit it, and go from there.
Are you used to them now?
Yes, yeah, very well used to them. But me personally, I've not had an issue of remembering to hit a button on high stress situations or anything.
Yeah, and I would think that, and I'm just if I were in patrol, knowing that I'm responding to that call, like, okay, I might even be hitting it even before I get there.
Right.
Just, depending on the nature of the call, because I don't want to be thinking about that when I exit my car if I'm dealing with somebody that, maybe is armed with a weapon. So, yeah, hitting that as you're going. Just like we always talk about when you get about a half a block out, we're taking our seatbelts off, right? We're telling dispatch that we're going on scene. So the body cameras, it's nothing really, I think, new to us as a country. It is a little bit new to us as an agency. So how does that work as far as, John, you were talking about you bring it back in at the end of the night and you dock it. So is it automatically downloading all of your video that got recorded for that shift?
Yeah. Yep. It dock it for the night. It'll download stuff. Depending on how much footage you have, it can vary in the amount of time. But for the most part, it's pretty quick and painless.
So has there been any, I know when we're putting together an arrest report or an affidavit of probable cause, does it help us to be able to go back and actually have real-time audio and video? That way when you're doing your report or your narrative, you've got a great reference, because, again, you're like, well, I said this, and it might be a little bit different as far as the verbiage, but you can go back to the video and say, well, this is exactly, I listened to what the audio, what I stated, what the person stated to get that accuracy. Does that help?
Yes.
Yeah. And would you guys, in your opinion, feel like that, and I think I know the answer, but does it help us more than it hurts us?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially during complaints. If I get a complaint against an officer, I can go back to that call, watch the camera video, and just kind of go from there. If I need to speak with the officer and say, hey, watch your tone, or no, my officer did just fine, you need to watch your tone.
Yeah.
It really does help us more than it hurts us.
And we do body camera audits every quarter.
Okay.
The
And explain that?
The supervisors will watch a series of videos, then pros, cons, what could be done better, what was done right. Officers, there are charges on the suspect, if there was a suspect, and then they send those audits to me. I review them, and then I send them to the administrative major. But also, another thing with body cams, you get to see some heroics. I saw third shift B squad.
Yeah, don't get that wrong.
Yeah, sorry,
Never,
third shift.
Yeah.
Had a house fire and watched those guys run in there and handle business and get 2 people out. That was pretty.
A squad.
That was A squad. Yeah. Sorry, A squad. That was really impressive. First shift had a incident on a bridge. Watching that body cam, I mean, you really get to see what's really going on. You don't have to rely on the written word. But then a body cam is not 100%.
The end-all, be-all.
The end-all, be-all.
Right.
Couple that with the report, witness statements, and like that, and you get a pretty solid picture of what happened.
Yeah, and I would think from a prosecution standpoint, it's great for them to be able to look at the video, especially say if you're dealing with somebody that's intoxicated. Most times people that are intoxicated don't maybe realize how intoxicated they are. They don't act normal. They say and do things, and no, you did try to fight us. And they're like, well, and in court, they're like, I don't remember doing that. And you play a video, like, yeah, he was fighting us, yeah.
Here you are, buddy.
Yeah. Well, and I, talking to some college-age students yesterday, we start talking about this human element, right? I mean, we're all human, right? And again, and you just mentioned that, you may have to go back and review some video footage of an officer saying or doing something that somebody, either files a complaint about, and I mean, we just have to, and again, that's kind of one of the reasons we have this podcast is just to be transparent. There are times in our profession where, we use profanity. We may say, get down on the ground, or, there's something that just comes out, and, and again, it's part of the stress factor goes up. And things get intense, and the verbiage we use, or maybe the tone that we're using.
Some people only understand swearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell you to get on the ground, but if I tell you to get
F
on the ground,
yeah.
they understand that.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, it's, and again, we, and I know you guys know this, but, we hold our officers and ourselves to the highest standard, right? But then again, I was talking to these students yesterday, like there's always the human element. I can remember, and I shared this story yesterday with these students. It's like we got sent to a 1016, which is a domestic dispute. I was second shift. Myself and the other officer are en route, and dispatch comes back over the radio, and they're telling us to step it up. And when they were keying their mic up, you could hear the female in the background screaming. And she's yelling, he's trying to get into the bedroom. So we go on scene, and I can hear the chaos, going on inside the house. She's screaming, he's yelling at her. You can hear banging. I don't know at this point if he's armed or not. Dispatch is trying to relay information. She's upset. And under exigent circumstances, we force entry into the front door. And I remember going in, and I see this male come out of the bedroom. He's a good-sized guy, probably mid-40s, white male. I'd say he's probably 6'4", 6'5", 250, 60 pounds. I recognized him from a previous incident. I knew that he had the tendency to drink, tendency to fight. And I was like, just thinking to myself, like, yeah, I know this is going to be an altercation. So after he comes out, I start giving him verbal commands. I'm like, hey, come toward me, get down on the ground. Well, he's non-compliant. You can tell he's agitated. He's kind of got that clenched jaw. His fists are kind of clenched. He's kind of in a stature, a posture, and he's walking toward me aggressively. And then I see the female walk out. And I can tell you in 28 years, I've had 2 battery victims that just were beaten really badly. She probably was number 2. I mean, he had done a number on her. Like, how do we, keep those emotions in check when you see a female that's been battered that bad, and now you've got this guy that's walking towards you wanting to do you harm? It's like, man, that's, and that's the expectation that our officers deal with. I mean,
Right.
pretty regular.
We'll see something like that or something. Go ahead.
All the nasty homes we have to go into. You see bad parenting,
Yeah,
children that need to be saved, and it wears on you.
it does. Yeah. What were you going to say, Renee?
You go from one high stress situation, where you see women, children, or even at times husbands being beat, to if that takes, a couple hours, which, doing an investigation can very well take that long. You go to something like a harassment call, and because they've waited so long, they're yelling at you, and you're supposed to be, oh, okay.
It's
And
hard.
it's like, listen.
Yeah,
It's
we're
hard to
wearing those hats, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and sometimes those hats are like, 1 minute you're this, and the next minute you're a counselor. Then
Yeah.
the next minute you're a consoler. The next minute you're having to be the authoritarian and tell people like, hey, quit arguing over whose dog is pooping in whose yard, right? And then, you couple with some of the, other, and I think we've seen an increase. I don't work the street, like you guys, but I mean, mental health calls have
yeah.
went up exponentially in the last,
Overdoses have gone up.
overdoses, but going back to that call that I was describing, it's like he continues to walk toward us, and at that point, we really didn't have some of the options that are afforded to officers nowadays. And what I mean by that is probably the number one tool that we
Taser.
have is our taser. And again, you guys can probably talk a little bit more about that taser, what its capability is, how it's used. And again, I think that tasers, like anything else, if somebody ends up being a fatal situation, those are so rare. I mean, if you look at the percentages, I mean, it's right less than 1%.
Well, that was the purpose of the taser, why it was invented, was to prevent officers from using that, deadly use of force. Not necessarily, making it stop altogether, but it gives us another tool that we can utilize on somebody. And they've evolved now just from the ones that
Yeah.
we've had, where you could, remove a cartridge and do, the taser to skin contact for a drive stun.
Yep.
So now there's actual cartridges that shoot them the prongs out, and we don't have the drive stun anymore. So we have to be cognizant of that.
Yeah, and I think this new generation, it's technology, right? That evolution that, we have a greater distance that we can shoot. We have better accuracy. We actually have multiple cartridges, so you can gauge multiple individuals if you need to. So again, it's that technology. But, back then, I didn't really have anything. So I had to make that decision do I, produce my firearm and give him verbal commands and hope that just that use of force that I'm showing gets compliance, or do I stay holstered? And it ended up being an altercation to where we had to fight this guy to get him in handcuffs. And again, it's, when talking to these college age students, like, there's a whole gamut of emotions that are going on, and it's like this. It's happening so quickly.
You two brought up some good points, because we never know what the day is going to bring. I mean, you could have the most boring shift in the world, what you're going to pay for the next day.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be the worst.
Yeah, we all know
Worst
that
shift
Q
of the-
word, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We never
don't say
mention
that
Yeah,
Q word.
cops will never say the Q word.
No.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like you don't know what you're going to go to. And like Renee said, you can go from a call where it's a SIDS death, and then you're dealing with that, and then you have to go to a civil dispute, or what we call a 1015, and they're arguing over whose dog is pooping in whose yard. And you just really want to tell them what you think, but you can't.
Yeah.
So,
And that's hard, and again, it's something I think that, our officers, it takes time to navigate that. John, you've got 3 years on, and I'm sure with 3 years on now, you're better equipped, you have more experience, you've been on more calls than what you did in a year, right?
Yeah.
And there's a learning curve, right?
There definitely is. Just looking at myself a year ago and then a year before that, there's a drastic change there in, how you handle stuff, or how I handle stuff, and just general, everyday routines, for lack of better terms.
Yeah, we talked about this in the first podcast a little bit about where we are as an agency right now, and we're an 80-person department that includes our 4 officers that are in the schools, but we're a pretty young department right now. We've had a lot of officers retire. On our last podcast, we talked about a few that have left, a few that are getting ready to leave just due to retirement. And we know when we came on, I can remember like to get to day shift, and we bid things on seniority. So if you have more seniority than the next person, you can take your pick of what shift. And it was like 18 years.
it was 21 years when I got hired on. I made it in 12, and now it's like 6 years.
Yeah, and and the thing about that is, it's just where we are as an agency, and I think that we'll kind of see things shift back a little bit the other way. But we've got detectives who have 5 or 6 years on, that typically, that's another division. Your most senior people were on day shift and back in detectives. So, there's definitely a learning curve, and I know that at some point I'm going to have Sergeant Schuler, our training coordinator, come on and talk about the training that we do and the importance of, our FTO program. And I know it's like, these guys that are and gals that are FTOs, we're hiring and training so many officers. I mean, it can be difficult, right,
Yeah.
to have somebody in the passenger seat, or you're in the passenger seat every day for, a year straight.
I don't mind when they drive.
You don't?
I like second and third face, or I liked second and third face when I was an FTO, so they can drive and I can see how they react to the stressors and just kind of coach them
Oh,
along.
I'm a bad passenger.
Yeah.
I get car sick.
And I'm not.
I don't wanna ride
I don't
with
like driving
anybody.
that much, so it's just like, oh, here.
Yeah.
Have the keys
Well, yeah,
as soon
but,
as you can.
but how is that, right? When they're in that phase to their first night driving, they get that first hot call. They're running lights and sirens.
You're white knuckling it.
Yeah, you're holding on, maybe silently, just pray.
they hit a curb. They're like, oopsie. And it's
Yeah.
like, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah. And again, we talk about that, John, there's the learning curve. It's like the first hot call you go on isn't going to be the same as the 100th or whatever.
Yep.
And that's why I think that the training that we're doing, and again, I don't know if you guys remember the number, but we recently had our pension board meeting, and Sergeant Schuler, who's our training coordinator, talked about
It was like 16,400 hours of training, I think.
Yeah, as an agency.
Yeah.
And I think it went up, what was the percent? Like something like 200% it went
It was
up.
insane.
Yeah. So again, it's us being very direct as an agency, and one, I think, recognizing, training's always important. It doesn't matter if you've got 28 or 20, it's always going to be important and relevant, and always, I think, there's an uptrend of always learning. But when you've got officers that have, and we talked about this, I think we've hired roughly 25 officers in the last 2 years. That's almost a third of the agency that has less than 2 years on. So obviously we have to continue to, up those training hours to make sure that that learning curve, we're getting officers where they need to be much quicker.
And the job's always evolving too.
Oh, yeah. We were talking about losing some of our senior detectives back in the detective division, Detective Sutton and Longnecker. You got Detective Laguerre that's going to be leaving, and those are difficult spots to replace, and you have to train up that next generation of officers. So we've done a great job, I think, as an agency recognizing that and having our officers continually focusing on those things. Anything else from a patrol standpoint that you guys want to highlight, talk about? Typically I know that the normal day for patrol is they come to the division, or sometimes you guys don't meet at the building, but a location. You have your kind of your roll call. You sit down and you discuss what the trends were on some of the previous 2 shifts, pass along information, gives officers an opportunity just to connect at the beginning of the shift, get your gear on, do district assignments, and I go back, and I'm sure it's the same, John. It's like, do you have a preference in what district you like to ride?
If I had to pick one, I would. To be honest, I really don't mind all the districts. Last year I worked to the south side a lot, and this year I like to keep it changed up a little bit. I've been working the west side and the east side mainly this year, so something different. I really don't have a preference, though.
So what would you say as a supervisor of third shift? Do you have officers that tend to like ride certain districts?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I tend to go by seniority on my shift, what district that they would prefer, and they go from listing their favorites on down to their least, and then that's how I'll assign them.
Yeah. I remember, having those certain districts, and, I think there's a little bit of an advantage, right? As long as the officers, riding the same district, you become very familiar.
Yes. And you get good rapport with, your business people, people that you come in contact with on the street, and the more you see them, the more of a rapport you build up. And
yeah, and you kind of know the hot spots,
yes.
the trends of where things are going on, and and it's good. I remember working second shift years ago, and South 11th Street was the hot spot. From honestly about the 100 block down to about the 600-700 block, and we had a lot of issues going on through there. A lot of it was narcotics distribution, and we'd double up. Austin and I'd be like, hey, let's go out and do foot patrol, for a while, and sometimes it would last 10 minutes because we're running, getting back in the car. Or, sometimes it was just walking for an hour and talking to people in the neighborhood, getting information, again, building rapport with people, which, we know that's important. And sometimes like on, thirds, you don't get the opportunity like on seconds, you guys, see a little bit more people out, thirds, depending on the time of year. I remember there being nights and you're not seeing anybody out.
yeah, unless it's the gas station people, and you're just like,
Yeah.
hi again.
It's
Or-
so
or-
quiet on third shift.
Or the
in
Krispy
winter.
Kreme truck.
Yeah.
I remember following him a couple times on third.
Remember when the people would deliver the paper, they would get stopped
Yes.
5, 6, 7 times a night.
You think that they're
they were
drinking and
suspicious. But then you realize after the 7th time you stopped them, you realize they're delivering papers. And
Yeah. So I'll just kind of look at the little outline I made here, just to kind of look at the things to make sure we've kind of overviewed everything. I feel like, we've talked about training, community interaction, the challenge of some of the work, technology and equipment that we wear. Let's just talk maybe a little bit about the next segment is just officer safety and wellness. We've been in this game a long time, right? And we've had our peaks and valleys, and we've had some critical incidents that have occurred in our career. The Dennis Middle School incident, Officer Sierra Burton, those are things that are large scale incidents that can take a toll on an officer, coupled with all the day-to-day challenges of the things that you see and deal with. I know you mentioned something about an infant death. I've been on several of those. I was a investigator on a couple of them, and how difficult that can be to have to show up at the hospital and do photographs and that stuff. And and that's why I think that we as a community of law enforcement, whether it's our agency or us in the sheriff's department or us in Hagerstown, Centerville, Fountain City, I mean, there's a big bond and a brother and sisterhood that really does exist. It's like anything else, right? Sometimes siblings don't get along and they want to take it out in the backyard and hash things out and have words or whatever. But, at the end of the day, we know in those situations that everybody's, there for one another. But, one thing that I think that, and you might talk a little bit about this on that schedule that we currently work, which is a 4 on, 4 off, part of that, what that day looks like, because obviously if it's a 10-hour shift, we're going to have some overlap in that 24-hour period. So kind of talk a little bit about, what officers, what their expectations are with their time and what they can do, if they're caught up on the reports.
Yeah, well, first, there's a 2-hour overlap of every shift. First shift is from 6 a to 4 p.m. Second shift, like I said, is 2 p.m. to midnight. And third shift is 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. So the first half hour of your shift, let's say second shift, 2 to 2:30, is reserved for them for roll call. They get their body cams, change out their taser battery, do whatever they need to do. And then they'll hit the street while first shift for that last hour and a half can finish their reports. They can go to the gym. They can get other stuff done. How do you guys do it on third?
It's pretty much the same way. We can. I expect them to make sure they have all the reports that are required to be done, to be finished, before they go to the training center. That's our gym that we're allowed to go to for that last.
Is that difficult, with, I never was like on thirds when we had the ability to go work out, but is it difficult at 6:30 in the morning to get motivated? I mean, that's the end of your shift. You're thinking about going
I do all
home.
my working out prior to coming on to,
Do you?
to shift, yeah.
So do you have officers that try to get down there that last hour and a half?
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm only assuming that, that also is good, I think, for the officers, to be able to build that time and bond together, to push each other in the gym, hold each other accountable. A lot of people like to have, workout partners. So, and I know that if you go down to the training center on the board up there, there's even a little bit of some records, right? Yeah. Us kind of competing with fire. Yeah. And I guess it's because this is our podcast. I mean, we can say that, like, our names are on the board over fire. Yeah. Maybe we can bring them in and talk about it. But I think there's, some huge advantage when we are affording our officers the opportunity to do that kind of decompression at the end of their shift, to go in, get a workout together. Physical fitness, obviously, is important in this job. Obviously, it's a little bit different when you're in different roles and positions. I mean, we've been on so long now and serving different positions. It's a little bit different, Maybe my emphasis isn't the same now as what it was when, I was on the SWAT team. The standard was like, hey, I got to make sure that I'm keeping up with my guys and my gals. But that schedule that we have now, I think also provides that 4 days off, right, to decompress.
How does that
it's a great
feel
work.
for you?
Yeah.
It feels good. It's definitely nice having more time off that's grouped together. Let you spend more time with your family and at home and just kind of decompress from the week.
Our old schedule, we worked a 4 and 2 schedule, and no one was rested coming back. It always felt like we were cheated out of a day off. So I'm glad this 4 on. We had some issues in the beginning trying to make it work, but things are running pretty good right now.
Yeah, and anytime, and we know this, right? Anytime, I think anywhere there's change, there's always got to look at adjusting things, managing things. I don't work that schedule, but I'm so happy as an agency that we can provide that opportunity for our officers. And I think that if you look across the state, and I think we have done this, there's not a lot of agencies that are working this type of schedule. Again, and I think that's because it does require a high level of managing things. Our supervisors doing a good job of making sure that, we're reducing the amount of overtime that, officers are getting their paperwork done on time. But, you're right. And I think you said it earlier. It's like that first day off is a whole day of just trying to decompress of the stresses of the job.
Yeah, I told Lieutenant Lips before we even started, like, I take the very first day of our 4-day break. I don't check emails. Nothing work related. I just stay away from
You
it.
say that, you get that SWAT call out at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Which we don't mind those, right?
No, those are fun.
Yeah, those are fun.
Those are worth it.
Yeah, those are worth it. But then that still gives you those 3 days, right?
Right.
Man, 3 days off. I mean, that's, yeah. So, I think that there's some strong value in having this work schedule. And from a recruiting standpoint, if we as an agency and somebody's out looking for an agency to work for, I think that's a huge factor. Wouldn't you agree? That
Yes.
work schedule, I mean, that would entice.
That was the main reason why some of officers that we've had, including laterals,
Yeah.
came over here,
Yeah.
was because of the work schedule.
Yeah, and I would also, say that the uniform that we wear now has been a huge, I think, for officers again, and going around and talking to other agencies, and me going to some of the recruiting events. What are the next generation of officers looking for in an agency? And I think that one of the first things I always look toward, I think, is normal. It's like, what's the pay? What's the benefits package? And I think that our benefits and our pay is, like any profession, we could be seeking better, but, we don't live in Carmel, Fishers, and those areas, Noblesville, that maybe has a little bit better, base pay.
base.
But, you got to look at the big picture. And, when you start talking to the next generation of law enforcement officers, there's a strong value in that work schedule. Having that family time, that time to decompress, that time to say, I mean, honestly, right, on a 4-day off, I mean, you've got 4 days to where in the summertime, if you want to go away for 3 days, go out of town, go camping,
Right.
go
Or
whatever.
you take a week off for vacation. You're off for 2 weeks, so
Yeah.
it works out.
It works out great. And I think the other big thing that I've heard from talking to these officers that are looking at agencies is the uniform. And something as little as, and I've got a little bit of one going
Well,
on.
the
and-
beard we have
yeah.
a beard policy now where the guys are allowed to grow beards. So
Yeah, and again, I see the value, and serving time in the military, and there's no facial hair.
Yeah, it took a long time to get used to that.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt dirty putting a uniform on with scruff on my face, but
Yeah.
I got used to it.
Yeah, but and I think that you're seeing a little bit of a trend across America where some things like that are, kind of coming down a little bit, and and I could see somebody, I remember years ago when your dad was on the department, he was responsible for our gas mask, and one of the big things, like, well, you're not going to get that mask to seal if you don't have, and if you've got this facial hair, and you gotta. So we've made that transition to where officers can maintain a beard. Of course, there's standards with it, right? They have to keep it groomed. It's got to be less than a certain length or whatever. But I not heard a lot of backlash from the community on those changes that we've made. I mean, have you guys?
No.
Yeah.
I think it's one of they don't really care, I don't think.
Yeah. And I kind of like, and I think with you, with uniformity and being old school a little bit, it's like, it's a tough transition all of a sudden now, go to it. Giving guys, or gals beards.
But what, it makes them happy. That's
Yeah.
It doesn't affect anything. They're still protected. They still have access to all their equipment.
Yeah.
It's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hate to say, but those are the things that officers that are seeking employment, they want to look at. Hey, what's this agency look like? What's the uniform, the work schedule?
do
Ball
you have a
caps.
tattoo
Yeah, well,
policy?
yeah, do you have a tattoo policy? And what's that look like? I remember for years, it was a long time ago, like if you had anything, you had to keep it covered up. So wearing a long sleeve, and obviously we, our tattoos that officers have, I mean, they can't have, there's criteria, right? You
Right.
can't walk around with vulgarity or nudity or things that aren't going to reflect, the agency. But, I think it's that evolution that we've seen. And sometimes just because it's changed, we're like, yeah, we're not going to do that. So, I think with the work schedule, the uniforms that we have, those things are definitely, I think, improved, us as an agency with morale and stuff. Any memorable stories, anything that you guys can think of that you want to share? Anything recent, anything old? Anything that would be appropriate to share? I know, because that's the crazy thing about
Yeah.
law enforcement. John maybe isn't there yet with 3 years, but we have seen it all.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything we haven't seen.
The one I can think of, an officer and I was in the winter. It was actually on Super Bowl Sunday, freezing cold, and there's 2 feet of snow on the ground and 6 inches of ice on the road. We get sent to a gun call, and he gets there first. Everything about this cause made it sound like it was not legitimate. It just sounded weird. He gets there first, and he's walking up to the house, and I park right behind him. I get out, and next thing you know, he yells gun. So, of course, I roll out of my car, but all the ice, I slip. So I'm going feet first down this, we're parked on a hill, feet first down a hill for about 2 houses, somehow end up going head first for another 2 houses. And then I'm trying to run up through the ice to the house to get with my partner, and then come to find out he was mistaken. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But he still talks about that, and he still laughs because you just see me just rolling down the street.
Yeah. What about you, John? Anything pops out?
Off the top of my head, no, but I mean, it's always nice. You run into that person who's actually doing good for themselves after you run into them when they're at a low point in their life. That's just something you don't see too often, but when you do, it's nice.
Yeah, and I talked a little bit to these students yesterday about this. It's like we have some really good people in our agency. We just do. And and if we don't highlight the good that we do, all the night to shines that you've attended in how many years, it's just like if we don't highlight, the things that we do, because one of the questions I posed to these college students, when I hired on, and much like you guys, there were 200 and some applicants for just a couple jobs.
Yeah.
And those dynamics have changed to where, we don't have 200 applicants. We maybe get 20, and we've got, X amount of positions to fill.
We would run one hiring process every 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
Maxed out at 25, and if you weren't in the top 10,
Yeah.
you had no chance of
Yeah.
getting hired on. And now we're taking all 20.
Yeah. Well, and and I asked them, I kind of challenged them with that opening question, like, what do you think has changed? In both classes, there was probably, 25 students in one and about 35 in the other. And these college kids just said both of them. And you could see the kids agreeing and nodding their heads like negative social media, how law enforcement gets painted, so, and we know, that's what's difficult about the profession. It's like, John, you could go out and do 100 things right, and then maybe that one thing, it may not even be that extreme, but maybe you use some profanity, or maybe you just dealt with an infant death and you're kind of on edge a little bit, and now you're talking to the neighbor who's making a big issue about the neighbor's dog pooping in your yard, and you're like, hey, we're not doing this, and you change your tone, and they're like, well, I'm filing a complaint because he yelled at you. It's like, so I feel like we have to, and that's one of the reasons I do want this podcast, is because it gives the community to really see and understand who we are and how difficult this job is and the human side of it. Because, over, my 28 years, like I said, and anybody that served, I go back to all these other officers that I've served with and retired. It's like, it's good to see them be able to leave here, the guys that have and gals that have made it in a good emotional place. Because again, divorce rate's high, suicide's high, substance abuse is high. Those things are those factors we don't talk about. And, for me, being able to highlight the good that we do, the polar plunge that we just got to do, the Night to Shine event, our national night out, the parade events, all the community engagement stuff that we do, and all the things that our officers honestly do like every day. They're doing something good almost every day. And that's not what we get to highlight. So the only way I feel like we can change the fabric of that in this country is we got to start doing a better job of, bringing to the community the good that we do.
And sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and I know that most of the community sees that, but even our first podcast, there were people with just negative comments. And it's just like, we know there's going to be people those 5% people, it doesn't matter. They're going to be complaining about something, but again, we've got good intentions. We truly do. We love our community. We want to take care of our officers. Our officers, when they come to work, they want to know that we support them. And when they go home, they can focus on their family and their life outside of the job.
Yeah, like social media, actually probably 3/4 of that stuff is outright lies or just one side of the stories. Like if you've ever read a news article about an incident where you were there and you're thinking, okay, none of this happened. This did not happen the way it's framed.
Yeah.
And you kind of see it.
Yeah.
Look at all the pages on Facebook. Some people just want to be negative
Yeah.
just because they have to make themselves feel better.
Yeah.
And I think one thing as cops is we probably need to start sticking up for ourselves a little bit more, calling people out,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, professionally.
Yeah.
But he's like, you're lying. This never happened.
Yeah,
And-
yeah. Well, and I think we do a good job. You know, if you look at our social media platform, our Facebook, I think we've got roughly 55,000 followers. You know, we recently had a video that got posted where our SWAT team got deployed. And I think like that video got a couple million views.
You're famous.
Yeah, famous. Don't know who's famous. I mean, I know it was my voice, and someone's like, "Oh, your voice is famous." I'm like, "Okay, what's that do for me?" But you know, again, I find strong value in giving you know, us as an agency a voice, the community an opportunity. Like I said, you've been on 3 years. You know, some community haven't got to meet Officer Knock yet. But I truly, in my heart, know that we are a great agency with great officers. We're moving always in the right direction of challenging ourselves to be better and to do better. Any funny stories, anything pop off the top of your head? I'll tell one on myself. So it was second shift, summertime, patrol, and I was just strolling up north, District 3. I go through the Meyer parking lot, and a lady had parked her car, you know, right at the entrance where they got the lines painted, like where pedestrian traffic, you know, walks. She's parked right there. So I just kind of pull up behind her and just waiting for her to move. You know, I was going to give her a reasonable amount of time, you know, no big deal. But people are kind of looking at her and saying, "Oh, that's kind of awkward. She's parked right there." And people looking at me like, "Aren't you going to do something?" So I just kind of pull up behind her and I hit my horn, you know, whoop, whoop. And I kind of try to wave her on, and she gives me the, "Wait a minute." And I was like, "What?" She told me to hold on. So I give it 10, 15 seconds, let her maybe rethink it. I hit the siren again, and then she gives me the, oh, wait a minute. I was like, all right, I'm going to have a talk with her. So next thing you know, a lady comes out with not one, but 2 shopping carts. And now she's loading all of her groceries in, which takes another 5 minutes. I'm like, I'm at least going to have a conversation with her, right? So I don't want to mess up the flow of traffic. So I wait till she gets to the north end of the lot, and I activate my lights. I go up and just going to have a, you know, I wasn't going to write her a citation or nothing. You know, just wanted to say, hey, be considerate. You know, I mean, it does say no parking up there and this and that. And I start, you know, going into my introduction with her, and I look back and I did not get my car in park. It was in reverse. And I look back, and my car is now going across the Meyer parking lot in reverse. And I literally just kind of look at her, look at the car, and I take off at a dead sprint. I could see my car heading toward the main parking lot where all the cars are at. Yeah, I get there, I get in, and I just left. I shut my lights off, and I just left. I was like, I skirted that one. I appreciate you guys being here. I know there was probably some anticipation coming on today, just being in front of camera, and you know, and obviously, you know, we're all critical of the job we do, and we want to say and do the right things. And but this, you know, this podcast also is just, you know, there's some vulnerability in this to let the community know that, you know, again, we're human. You know, none of us are, you know, normal for us to be behind camera. So I appreciate you guys coming in today. You know, in the future, we're going to be looking at bringing in our detective division. Captain Andy Jury oversees that division. We'll be filming the next podcast sometime in the next month. I'm assuming that our DS1 live crew here will get this edited and get it out very soon. I appreciate you tuning in. Not sure how long we took today. I know the last podcast was about an hour, so they'll do their job of getting this edited, get this out to you guys. We love the support. We love our community. We love our agency. And we look forward to episode 3, where we'll have Captain Jury and some of our detectives come in. Hopefully we get maybe Detective Laguerre in here. He's one of our more senior detectives, actually one of our more senior officers. I think Tom's, 40... Close to 40.
I think he is the most senior. Yeah.
Yeah. So been there a long time. We call him the GOAT. So we appreciate you tuning in today, and we look forward to see you on episode 3.
Thanks for tuning into the podcast today. If you'd like to donate to the studio, our Venmo is right here. All donations would be appreciated. Thanks, and have a great day.